Frederica Jantz, welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
You took your job as the editor of the Sunday Leader newspaper in the most terrible of circumstances. Your predecessor, Lasantha Wickrematunge, was gunned down on the streets of Colombo. What was it like to take the job when the last editor had been murdered?
It was awful. It was awful because I had worked closely with Lasantha on this newspaper before. I had in fact trained under him. The day that Lasantha was killed was horrible. I was first called, I need think Lal, his brother, who is chairman of this newspaper, telephoned me. He was half crying and he said Lasantha had been shot. And I rushed to the hospital and watched him die.
Lasantha wrote this extraordinary valedictory, in a sense, predicting his own death. He wrote it in the days before he was, in essence, assassinated. And in it, as he predicted his own demise, he said, the leader and its staff will fight on. And he used this phrase, unbowed and unafraid. But that cannot be realistic. You cannot be unafraid.
That is the motto of the Sunday Leader. It always has been and it still is. But certainly we are not unafraid. This newspaper has been burnt down twice. Its presses have been burnt twice. We were sealed once. We've been threatened, assaulted. Lasantha has been physically assaulted once. His home was shot at another time. When I worked on the newspaper with him, together with him, I too received many death threats. We were in and out of court all the time. So, yes, Lasantha stood by that motto and he ingrained in all of us that we should remain unbowed and unafraid. But that does not mean that Lasantha was also not afraid, or that all of us here have not been afraid at various different times.
Who do you believe is responsible for the death of your predecessor?
I believe it has to be someone or persons who are extremely close to the powers that be and to the president, which is why they continue to be shielded.
Where's your proof?
We actually have no proof, unfortunately.
So why do you believe that? And is it fair to say that if you have not a shred of evidence?
I say that because I cannot believe that our police can be this important that they have not been able to find a single clue leading up to who may have murdered Lasantha. That can only be if those persons, the perpetrators of that attack, are protected by the highest in this land.
Do you think the Sri Lankan people are on your side?
Our readers certainly are. We serve a certain niche market. It's an English newspaper, so we are certainly not as big as a Sinhala newspaper and reaching out to the majority in that context.
Most Sri Lankans are more concerned right now with peace, security, and economic growth. Are you really sure that they would back your call for international action and pressure against Sri Lanka?
They will not actively back our call. That is one of the biggest challenges this newspaper faces, the lack of action by civil society in that context.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. This level of apathy among Sri Lankans is something I myself cannot understand. Because as much as you say that yes, we have peace, economic growth and development to a certain extent, on the other hand, there is no freedom of expression, which is what this newspaper has consistently called for. We have also consistently and continuously insisted that we must have an independent judiciary, an independent police, an independent elections commission, none of which are in place yet. But whether these issues matter enough to the majority of Sri Lankans, I honestly don't think so. They obviously don't.
If you believe that, and you believe, in essence, that the Sri Lankan people are really not particularly bothered to fight for the things you believe in, I come back to our opening conversation. Is it worth it for you to take the risks you've clearly decided to take, accept the dangers that appear to be real, for a cause which most Sri Lankans don't appear to share?
I cannot give up that easily. I love my country. I'm proud to be Sri Lankan. I have every intention of continuing to live in this country. I'm a mother of two. I want my children to continue living in Sri Lanka. And for that, towards that end, I think that I must do my little bit, however small it is, towards ensuring a better and freer society.
Frederica Jans, thank you very much for being on Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen. It was great meeting you.
Thank you very much.
The Sri Lankan government remains preoccupied with national security, and this is the man who has come to embody the iron will of the country's security apparatus. Gotabaya Rajapaksa is Defence Secretary. In effect, he runs all aspects of security policy for his brother, the President.
Gotabaya Rajapaksa, welcome to Hard Talk.
Right.
This country is still giving sweeping powers to the executive upon the notion that there is a war on terror, a war which of course is over. Why do you still need these sweeping powers?
There are so many countries, even in America, that there are laws to protect the country, to prevent anything happening. So these are there to prevent things happening. See, what we went through for 30 years, see, a person who had not gone through will not understand the sufferings, the deaths, the loss of life, loss of property. So we have to give priority number one to this.
There is an authoritarian tendency in Sri Lanka.
No.
And is it justifiable, for example...
No, see, this is very unfair to use these words. No, it's very unfair. We have a democratically elected president. We have a democratically elected government.
But you don't, for example, have a free press, do you?
I don't know why people are harping on these things.
Well, I'll tell you why, because internationally there is great concern that journalists who write perhaps critical pieces about your government end up in serious trouble, and some of them end up dead, as you well know.
These are LTTE propaganda. These are propaganda by the people who are against the government. So the international community goes on.
No, forgive me, it's not propaganda that Lasantha Wickrematunge,
propaganda.
for example, the editor of the Sunday Leader, was assassinated on the streets of the capital. That's not propaganda.
No, read the papers, read the daily papers, read the weekend papers.
Well, I've read all of the papers.
How many tabloids criticizing the government, criticizing the... not criticizing is fine, but how many bogus reports, how many monthly,
But hang on a minute.
Things,
When Mr. Wickrematunge wrote his valedictory piece, he foretold his own death. He wrote this, he said, and this is just days before he was shot dead on the streets of Colombo, "Murder," he said, "has become the primary tool whereby the state seeks to control the organs of liberty."
Don't go by these people who are writing against, there are enough people.
He's not writing
today,
anymore, he's dead.
I can quote enough, I can show you enough papers written against President of America or the Prime Minister of UK.
Well, of course you can. And
so
when I criticize the government of Britain, I do not end up with a bullet in the head.
Criticizing is different. I can show you enough tabloids, quoting a lot of parliamentarians, ministers in the UK, but are you going to believe all these things? And are you going to question on people on those lines?
But Mr. Secretary, let me ask you this question, and it's directed at you both as a very important member of the government, but also as a member of the Rajapaksa family. Does it seem to you healthy in a vibrant democracy that so much power should be held in one family. Your brother...
If the people gives that, President was elected by the people, Basil Rajapaksa was elected by the people with the highest majority in this country, with the highest preferential votes. Namal Rajapaksa was elected by the people with the highest percentage of preferential votes. Chamal Rajapaksa was elected by the people. So what? If the people want, so it be.
The Rajapaksa family is now responsible for 75% of the entire government budget. Is that healthy?
I don't think, those are figures that, you can calculate the various ways. It's not so.